And let me share my screen. Great. Welcome to D365 Saturday Wave 2. I'm Shanila Marshall, and I will be talking you through surviving a difficult project. I'd quickly like to recognize and say a quick thank you to Resco, MSCRM, and RSM, our sponsors for today's virtual event. Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Shanila, and I am a sales consultant at Avanade, which is an IT consulting and services company that specializes in business solutions in the Microsoft platform. My background wasn't always in sales. I actually spent 4 years in project management and also in change management, helping clients with organizational change as they digitally transform their business. When my head isn't completely buried into a computer screen, I absolutely love going out with friends, catching up over a meal, and going out dancing. Some might choose to call me a social butterfly. Aside from that, I also love sport, and I enjoy, engaging in fun activities like rounders, netball, etc. And I love trying new and fun things relating to sports and travel. Recently, I took up playing tennis, and it just might be my new favorite pastime. You can see my little tennis racket over there. If you do have any questions at the end of the presentation and after the call, you can always look me up on LinkedIn. I'm quite easy to find. Just type in my name and this picture actually comes up as well. Okay, so what are we going to be discussing today? Just a quick run through the agenda. On this call, I'd like to talk to you about a few things around the things you can do to help improve your experience and performance whilst working on a difficult project. Projects in consulting. I love this topic because it's so general. It's very likely that most of you on this call have experienced what it's like to work on a project, because that's why you're here. And I'm not just referring to your good old house project or assignment. I'm referring to the projects you typically undertake in the world of consulting. On a typical consulting project, you have a set of deliverables that you are contracted to deliver to a client, often another business, and you're usually required to do this over an agreed time frame as well. I know it sounds rather simple, but as a consultant, I learned that there are so many factors that come into play to ensure that a project is going well, not just around developing or delivering results, but also around ensuring that people on your project are doing their jobs and coping well. Bearing that in mind, when trying to assess how things are going, the word difficult can be subjective based on the person you're asking. For example, a few years ago, I was an analyst on this really stressful SharePoint migration project, and I remember taking absolutely nothing good out of it. Well, apart from the fact that I was out of it. Most days I'd work about 10 hours a day, helping my colleagues catch up with testing after doing my own deliverables. And it really wasn't a fun experience for me, as I didn't really enjoy that part of the job. And quite frankly, I'd much rather prefer being home, catching up with my family over a cup of tea. Anyways, fast track to earlier this year, when I caught up with one of the guys on my project, I found that their account of actually what happened on the project was completely opposite from mine. As far as he was concerned, we delivered according to plan and the client was happy with the results. And so it was a great project. But from my view, we were overworked trying to meet deadlines, and the client was constantly demanding items that are out of scope and not effectively managed. And for those of you who are familiar with change management, you need to really make sure that you log in all these different changes before you end up with scope creep. That's how you end up sort of running out of time at the end of the project. It got me into thinking that some people really think that a project is only going well if they're stretched beyond the norm. And I find usually that these are the people who love being busy on things that they enjoy doing, of course, and whatever it is on the project, they are doing it and it aligns them to meeting their goals. But what about those of us who are not quite happy with how things are going? How can we ensure that we've done our best to manage outcomes on projects? How can we ensure that we do our best to manage clients, to manage time, to manage finance and working conditions? First things first. Well, the first thing I do when I begin a new project is I set up a good and realistic working structure for myself. I begin to plan for success. I draw up a personal plan, and I see this as my go-to project manual that is specific to the project that I'm on. By the way, your project team should have all of this information in much more detail. And where I work, we call this a statement of work. This usually spans across the entire team from the start of the project to the end. I found that this would be very helpful with me understanding what is it that the client is expecting from me and how are they expecting me to deliver. Every client has their own preference around governance, so we need to make sure that we take that into consideration as well. In my plan, I would list out all of my deliverables and when I'd be required to deliver them by. Of course, along the way, I would need to revisit the list because things might change as the project progresses. It's important to not only track your deliverables, but also to understand them. I don't know about you, but when I interpret things as the what and the how, this might be completely different to how the client interprets it. Even if it's written in English in black and white. Can you imagine? English can be such a complex language, so you really need to make sure that you understand what you're delivering. Secondly, organize your time and set targets for yourself to complete activities. And whilst you're doing so, remember the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule, or the Pareto rule, the Pareto principle, says that 80% of meaningful effects come from only 20% of the effort you put in. I personally take this to mean that you should look for ways and always look for ways to improve your efficiency at work by filtering out all the trivial stuff that eats into, your time at work. I firmly believe that this is true. For example, when I remember a time when I was asked by my team lead to go around to my other colleagues on the team to find out what skills and certification they're most interested in learning. I mean, I was given a list of skills and certifications to choose from, and I needed to get their inputs on what their priorities are. I remember one of my colleagues pinging me on the side saying, man, that sucks to be you. He was sat right next to me, but he pinged me because my line manager was right next to me. He pinged and said, I remember, he pings me saying, that sucks to be you. You have to go around to everybody and ask them the same thing. Well, I wasn't planning to do that. What I was planning to do was send out a simple Microsoft form. So I laughed internally and thought, I can't believe people actually do that. Anyways, the best thing that you get out of the Microsoft form is that everyone's feedback is compiled into one place, and I can quickly fire out the results to my line manager without even needing to get up from my seat or send several emails and catch up later and track them into an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. That to me is perfect, or is handling the 80-20 rule perfectly. And that leads me to my third point. Familiarize yourself with tools and use them. I thought it would be good to remind you that technology and innovation isn't just for the client, it's for you too. Thankfully, we live in a digital age where we're flooded by business tools and applications that are designed to help us do our work more efficiently. It's important to find out the ways that are already available to our team that we probably don't know about. My teams in the past predominantly used Microsoft tools and applications for most things. But you know what I found out? I found out that some people are not very good at using these tools collaboratively and not very good at maximizing their purpose. I mean, just a few months ago, my sales lead asked me to share some visuals that I had done in Power BI, some visuals of our biggest deals. He was expecting me to share a link with him that would take him to a dashboard somewhere on the web. He did not know that I could actually share this same live dashboard in Teams as a tab in our chat room, in our chat window. And that would allow him to access this dashboard anytime and see the live changes anytime. And I'll tell you that I was really selfish in doing this because I was thinking, I'm going to do it this way instead because he's definitely going to come back to me and ask me for the link later. And this is annoying. I can't lie. It's very annoying. So I thought I would share it with him in the chat window. And anytime he wants to access it, he can just click. Anyways, this is my example of how you make the best use of tools collaboratively. Also, if you have that freedom on your projects, it's also really important that you share tips and tricks with your team on better ways to do things that will help you work more cohesively and deliver results faster for your client. Lastly, I want to touch on getting support. Get used to asking for support and get used to delegating. Going back to the project manual that I talked about earlier, in that, you should also have a list of useful contacts. This could be anywhere from key stakeholders that you need to engage on the client side to people in your project team who you know can help you do your work better. We all know that person who's just so good at just turning things around. Go back to that list when you need support and find that person who can help you. And there's no harm in like delegating your work, no matter what level in your career you're at. I mean, the worst thing that someone can say to you is, no, I don't want to help. No doesn't hurt, right? Anyways, moving on to my next slide. Managing expectations. To me, this is just consulting 101, but being able to manage expectation is so key, because if you do it wrongly, you can really make things difficult for yourself and your team when it's time to deliver what is promised to the client. From the start of your project, you need to adopt a transparent way of working with clients and teams alike. This really puts your communication and stakeholder management skills to the test, because effective communication is very key at the very beginning and is important to help you develop that rapport with your team and clients early on in the project. You really want to be conveying important information clearly and accurately around what you think the client wants you to deliver. This can really set the tone for the rest of the project. When in doubt, I would recommend you ask questions and ask them early on as you can. This gives you the opportunity to raise your concern early on, and it opens up the door for dialogue about potential problems that's happening on your project. That being said, learning to forecast and dealing with unfortunate news early on as well is the best thing that you can do for the client. Doing this, coupled with empathy and transparency, is crucial to maintain that good rapport that you have already built with the client and your team. Personally, I really had no problem doing this as an analyst on my projects. I later found out that it's actually one of the things that people considered young analysts to not be the best polished at. But I took forecasting and reporting news in my stride, and I saw it as just something that I will need to do anyway. And so I always went into those conversations with the client with the greatest empathy. I think it's really important to put yourself in your client's shoes when you're delivering bad news. You come across way more authentic, and the client will see that as well. They can see the empathy coming through, and it just softens the blow a little bit, I would say. Although they may not appreciate you for the bad news, most will actually later appreciate the way you handled it and the way you delivered the bad news. And that means that the relationship that you've already built with the client remains intact. That leads me to the next point. Do not overcommit or overpromise and underdeliver. This is my biggest pet peeve personally, and I probably say this because it's what impacted me, or it's what has been impacting me the most because of either me or my team overpromising. Now, after overpromising, we now have to work and put in the hard work in the background to make sure that we deliver all this extra stuff on time. Think of it this way. You go car shopping at your local dealership, and you describe to your dealer your ideal sports car and how you want it to look. And your dealer says to you, we've got something for you. It will be arriving in a few days. Don't worry, we've got you. And days later, on your way back to the dealers, you're already picturing that car that you clearly described to them, and you can't wait to see it. You're picturing something like a red Ferrari with turbo engines, something cool. And you're imagining all of this in your head on your way to dealers, only for you to get there and they show you a red Mini Sport. I mean, it's red and it is sport, but turbo engine, I'm not sure that's in there. Anyway, you would be rather upset and feeling like, your dealers, they basically thrown all of your requirements out of the window. I mean, they got the red right, and they got the car. I mean, it's a car, but really, it's nowhere near my standard. Anyways, think in that sense how your clients would feel if they ask you for a Ferrari and you deliver a Mini. I mean, no offense to Minis because I own one. Anyways, my last point is really what to do when you're in a tough meeting with a client or even teammates. It goes like, when the room is getting too hot to bear, before you say something you'll regret, remember to go to the balcony. One of my senior leads quoted this to me on a presentation around negotiating, and I thought, this is great. I'd recycle it for this presentation because it is so true. Sometimes, as hard as you might have prepared yourself, or you think you prepared yourself, sometimes meetings just don't go according to plan. And when you find yourself in one of those meetings, and it will happen, it's important to remember to remain calm, and if possible, step away from the room if you need to. This gives you more time to think, breathe, and recollect your composure so that you can go into the room with a clear mind to start again. And this is even more so and even more important when the client is being rude and just outright difficult. And this brings me nicely to looking after your health. At this point, I'd like to open up the platform for people to talk and just give their inputs around things that they've done on a difficult project to help them cope with their physical and mental health. I mean, it doesn't just go for consulting projects. It speaks to everyone across the world who own a job. Let's face it, the working life can be tough. And it can really take a toll on your physical and mental health. So a tough project can really impact me personally outside of work and disrupt my natural routine. So how does everyone feel, or what do you do when it comes to looking after your physical and mental health on a project? You can unmute yourself, by the way, and just call out. Is everybody there? Okay, this is strange. Probably voice is not coming through, but yeah. What I do to manage my physical health is I first of all address the time that is needed for me to plan out for myself. I personally, like I said before, I love going out for runs. I like going out to play sport and just going for casual walks. And I feel like sometimes when I don't have that time, it's just reserved for myself, I can really get stifled in work and feeling like I can't get out of it. So it's really important to plan time out for yourself and unapologetically do so. Make no excuses. Secondly, exercising comes into play as well with this. These days, I don't exercise quite as much because of our the COVID situation. But recently, I've picked up a new sport, which is tennis. And I'm fortunate enough to have a tennis court literally right next to my house. And whenever I'm free, I take my racket and I just go over there and play some tennis. That helps me free up my mind and get a bit of exercise going because it's really important for your physical health. Eating healthy and on time is also really important. And if you can, setting time aside to prepare your meals is so important because nothing beats home cooked meals. And I personally value home cooked meals as opposed to going to the nearby shop and getting something quick and ready. Lastly, get rest. And I highlighted that in red and I put it on both sides of the screen just to say, or just to amplify how important it is to get that 8 hours of sleep a night. I know most people, you might have children, you might have just a busy schedule around your life, and it may be very, very difficult for you to manage your resting time. I hear on some, or I've read on some sources that 6 hours is enough for some people. And I've read on other sources that 7 is enough. But if possible, try and get that 8. I mean, why not? Looking after your mental health is also so important, especially these days when there are just so many factors that come into play. Working on a difficult project can take its toll on you mentally. It can disrupt your thought process and it can disrupt your natural routines. Like I said before, going out with friends, I would cancel on them sometimes if I felt like I needed that extra time to just regain my energy after work or clear my mind and thoughts after work when I feel sort of down and depressed. Having said that, it's really important to avoid working until you crash. I cannot stress this more because it's really, really, really bad for your mental and physical health. When you find yourself in that position, when things are difficult and tough on projects, if you're struggling to deliver things on time, or if you're struggling with working dynamics or working conditions, or if you're just struggling to meet your personal goals and it's having a mental effect on you, it's really important to find someone on your team that you can confide in and tell about your problems. It's highly likely that they will try and help you and find ways to help, lift the stress off your back and help give you that support that you need, and share links and whatever is required to help you get to that place where you're happy again. Seek support and just, get support from people who are close to you. Mental health is something very serious, and people have been talking about it a lot recently because I think the workplace is becoming more and more aware of what's happening. And there are now so many different helplines that you can ring just to get a non-biased ear to share your dilemma with. So yeah, seek support if you need to, and try and get to that place where you can really get rest and a clear and peaceful mind. Lastly, remember who you are and why you're here. I've put this slide on because I felt that it was really important to include, just in general. I found this that I've been doing that myself as I've been feeling that I need to reflect a lot more after being on several projects. Sometimes I just had to, just address the fact that sometimes it's not the project, sometimes it's me, and it's a difficult thing to accept. After several projects, wearing several hats, sometimes change lead, sometimes delivery lead, I started relating my project issues to the way I feel about a particular role. And I started asking myself, was the project difficult because I didn't enjoy what I was doing? Or was it difficult for those other reasons that I mentioned above? It's important to address, what did you learn about yourself, your likes and your dislikes? Because it really speaks to your personal value, and it really helps you to filter through the things that you just won't tolerate in the future on any project. And this goes into talking about addressing your goals. I got into thinking about what my initial goals were before I started the project and where I was in terms of meeting them. By revisiting your goals, you really get to identify those areas where you had some big wins or even some breakthroughs, some cool breakthroughs. It's really important for you to celebrate them. And lastly, but not the least, when you've done all of that, all the self-reflection, it's really important to note down the lessons that you've learned. And not just note it down, but put actions in place to address them so that when you come to that new project or that new big challenge, that you will have that knowledge of how you performed in the past and take on what you've learned into the new project, which will help you do a lot better. Thank you, and I will go into Q&A. I noticed that in the previous slide, the one before this one, I had a link for useful resources, and I realized that I actually didn't consider the fact that there's people from all over joining the call potentially. And so I would actually prefer that you reach out to me on the side, or you can call it out on the Q&A section now of the things that you did or the things that you used to help you get better in project environments. Anyways, now I'll open up the platform for some questions. Let me see. Okay, does anyone have a question?